back with another topic. This one is how I'd be thinking about the DOT exam overall and in a general sense. So I have that two-part video series, what I would do leading up to the DOT physical to improve my odds, and what I would not do leading up to the DOT physical to improve my odds. Now, this particular video is sort of to complement those other videos. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to try to just make some points about and, give some tips, share how I would be thinking about the exam as a whole. So I'd like to just share a little bit of an analogy. Does anybody watch sports does anybody watch MMA, boxing, the Olympics? Those would be good examples. Even if you watch football, I can kind of give the Super Bowl as an analogy. Leave in the comments below if anybody understands the once you hear my analogy and you get it, let me know if it resonated with you. So any kind of competitive match or contest that you have to peak for is going to be a great example for this. When I mean peak, I mean game day. I mean for the match, if it's MMA or, boxing, Olympics, they only have a short time that they compete for. But what do all those things have in common? The training leading up to it is long term. So for those MMA guys, like in boxers, they have training camp, right? They're eating right, sleeping, boxing, lifting weights, like working on their skills, working on their cardio, running, swimming. They're doing that for months leading up to a competitive boxing match or MMA match, right? That's just so that they can be their best and be sharp and with it and have that endurance and that cardio and that power and, have their head movement and all this sort of stuff the day of. That's just to be prepared to peak for that. Now, this is a little bit, it's actually kind of got a crazy amount in common with the DOT physical, meaning a healthier lifestyle day in and day out really will help you be better prepared. But there are some key things to be mindful of in the short term leading up to it too. So here's how I'm going to tie that in to the boxers, to the MMA guys, the Olympics. So I want you to just picture a competitor for any of those, Olympics, boxing, MMA. They did everything so good. They trained, they had the early nights, they were dedicated, they ate right, they had the right mindset, they adhered, they followed their coach, they listened. Training camp went well. It went really, really well. But then I want you to think about some things that could go wrong in just the days leading up to the event that could really sabotage their performance. It's true, right? Like if you think about it, they could have done everything right, but I want you to imagine they get food poisoning less than 48 hours from the match. They get in a huge fight with their boyfriend or girlfriend 24 hours beforehand. It spikes their mental and emotional stress through the roof. They don't sleep the whole night before. If we know anything about sleep, we know it's this thing that needs to constantly be renewed. You can't say, well, I slept well 2 months ago. I slept well a month ago. I slept well 2 weeks ago. If you didn't sleep well last night, you're screwed. Just one night being up all night will impact your mental acuity, your performance. If you were driving a truck, you might not be able to stay awake. It might be dangerous. It might be almost the equivalent of being drunk or being impaired, So I want you to imagine if any of those things happen, they got food poisoning, they got a bad night's sleep, they got in a big fight, maybe they got an injury and now they can't, throw a jab the same way, or they can't, their knee is messed up or whatever it is, that is going to negate or throw off a lot of the hard work that they put in during their training camp. So when I speak about those, when I spoke in those videos, about prepping for the DOT physical, what I would do, what I would not do, I was, explaining personally what I would be really careful of. That is like, I would be using those things in conjunction with, in combination with trying to do the right things year round, like giving myself the best chances. I'm looking at it like I'm going to be good to myself. I'm going to try to respect myself. I'm going to work out. I'm going to try to get the good sleep, try to eat right. The majority of the time, those benefits are going to build up. But then there are some things I have to be super cognizant of and be well behaved in the few days leading up to it, because it could really skew my blood pressure, even if it was otherwise healthy. And that analogy holds true. Like, I'm trying to draw this parallel between, Olympics, combat sports, even like if anybody follows powerlifting or bodybuilding or like those strongman competitions, those would be good examples too. Like strength sports, bodybuilding, which is not a strength sport, but it's about cosmetics. Like they could, here's what I meant to say earlier in the video. Weight cuts. You ever see a guy's weight cut go bad? Like they're pulling out a bunch of water and then they dehydrate too much, or they're not able to, they have to use the IV and they're not able to get fully rehydrated well enough, and then they either get tired or they get knocked out easier. That's an example of something they did everything right. They screwed up something really bad, leading up to it, and then it threw it off. And that can, in my view, also happen even with blood pressure. An individual could have a blood pressure that's decent, most of the year, and then they get in a huge fight, the day of, they're super angry, or they're like, for whatever, they chewed a friggin' pack of nicotine gum going into the physical and their blood pressure's through the friggin' roof. Not a good idea. Like, this can totally happen, and that blood pressure reading, is going to be what you're judged on. So like the point that I'm making is, what's crazy about this is you're not really going to be assessed. Like, my understanding of the way the DOT physical works, they're not letting you average out, your numbers from the whole year. Even if you've got a digital blood pressure cuff at home and you're taking your blood pressure and it's cool most of the time, even if it's a few points high, they allow that, the cutoffs from what I've, researched, and they absolutely, it can be a little bit high, but they have cutoffs that it cannot be above. So even if you're within the limits most of the year, if you have terrible readings and terrible numbers the day of, guess what? That's what you're going to be held to. That's what you're going to be judged upon. And that's what you're going to lose your medical card based upon. Probably good to let that sink in. And that's part of the reason, that I was sharing what I would do and what I wouldn't do in the days leading up to it, because those final days can be very important. And even if you put in that training camp, like figuratively speaking, with those other things, just a bad weight cut, or, dehydrating too much, or getting food poisoning, or whatever it is, it might make it very hard for that athlete to compete, the day of. So I just wanted to share that perspective. So if it was me, if trucking was my occupation and I was over the road and I had all the knowledge that I have right now with my background, physiology, exercise physiology, nutritional science, all that good stuff, if I was able to apply that as a trucker, what would I be doing? I'd be trying to take the best care of myself I could over the course of the year, knowing that not only will I feel better, not only will my blood work be better, my doctor be happier, my risk of health problems be lower, but I'll be in better shape, for the DOT physical as well.